All right. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah. Wa ba'd. So we begin with the story of Prophet Nuh. We finished Adam and we talked about the children of Adam. And you'll find in many books that the next prophet is mentioned is a prophet by the name of Idris. Idris has like 2 or 3 verses mentioned about him, maybe maximum 4 verses mentioned about him in the Quran, and there's absolutely no other information about anything that has happened, and therefore we're just going to skip him because he's a prophet. We're not sure exactly where he fits in the timeline. Some scholars think he fits after between Adam and Nuh, and that's pretty much all we know about him. Everything else is from the Bible. They assume that he's Enoch from the Bible, but we don't even know that for sure. So we move on to Prophet Nuh. So we talked about Adam and Hawa, his wife, and they had children. So they had more than just 2 sons. We talked about what happened between the 2 sons. One brother ended up killing the other brother. But they had more children. And then eventually those children had children, they had grandchildren. And after several generations, there was more and more people on earth. And so they began moving, they began moving to different areas. They established towns, they established villages, and despite the fact that people had done some bad things, like one son of Adam did something, he committed murder, some really bad things, at the same time, nobody was worshipping anyone besides Allah. There was no idol worship. The first religion in the history of the world was worshipping one God, the one creator. And then later on, people eventually started coming up with different ideas. But in the beginning, people do bad things. People lie, people cheat, people steal, people commit murder, but they would never consider praying to anyone besides Allah. But if you go back to the story of Adam, you remember that Shaitan, he promised that he's going to try his best to misguide the human race, like people, Adam's descendants and children, and he's going to try to get them to do as many bad things as he can possibly get them to do. So he's already convinced Qabil to commit murder and kill his brother. So that worked well, but now it's time to up his game. So now he comes up with another idea. And the idea is basically, how can we get people to do something that is worse than killing another person? Murder is a major sin, one of the worst things that you could do. But what's worse than that? What's worse than that is praying to somebody besides Allah. In the sight of Allah, this is worse. And it's very important that every Muslim have this basic knowledge, because sadly this notion is being challenged today. Many Muslims even struggle themselves. They're like, no, I don't understand how an intellectual mistake is worse than a physical mistake. You've taken somebody's life versus, oh, you just prayed to the wrong person. No, there's something very serious about praying or giving credit for the world and worshipping somebody besides Allah when they don't deserve that. It's a very, very serious crime and a very serious sin, even though we don't look at it from a worldly perspective. So this is the worst sin that anyone can do. And so Shaitan comes up with an idea and he says, okay, I got to figure out how to get people to worship others besides worshiping Allah. So he came up with an idea. So there were people who were very nice people. Imagine, we don't know exactly who they were. We don't know exactly their names. But what we know is that they were really good people among the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of Adam. And there were some bad people, like one of Adam's sons. We know for sure. I mean, he's a murderer, killed his own brother. So there's good people and there's bad people. And the good people, they stand out. And what happens with good people is that people appreciate them. They love them. They respect them. They honor them. And so what happened is, when these people died, Shaitan whispered to them, or maybe they had an internal whispering themselves, and they say, hey, how can we remember these good people? Like, we loved them so much when they were alive, but now they're gone. So they came up with an idea and they said, you know what? If we draw a picture of them, we can remember them whenever we look at the picture. We'll think of the person when they were living, what a great person that was. So they started drawing a picture. And eventually, they made a little statue of kind of what that person used to look like. And whenever they would look at the statue of that dead person, who was that person? That was a very righteous person. The person that lived, They only prayed to Allah. Like a very good person, nice to everybody, generous, charitable, wise. So they said, we want to remember those really good people. So they started making statues, they started making paintings, and they knew that every time they look at the statue or the painting, it only represents a good person. It represents a Muslim. It represents somebody who prayed to Allah, not anyone who prayed to anyone else. So there's nothing wrong with the people of the statues that were being made. But then what happened? Eventually, people didn't teach their children properly. What do these statues really mean? What do they really represent? Who is the backstory? And so people used to venerate the picture and venerate the statue. So they'd go in front of the statue or the picture and they'd show like a respectful. They'd be like, you know what, whenever you walk in front of the statue, give like a little bow. And so the parents were doing that. And eventually the children were watching it and they were copying and saying, okay, this is part of our religion. This is what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to go and show respect in front of this picture. We're supposed to go and we're supposed to show respect in front of this statue. But the parents did not teach their children why they're doing that. So eventually, what did they start doing? Over time, they start praying to the statue itself, and they don't even know why. They start praying to the painting itself, and they don't even know why. And if you think about this is what happens with a lot of people. What do parents do? Parents will teach their children to do certain things, right? They'll teach their children, say, okay, this is how we cook. This is how we clean. This is how we make a certain meal. Somebody told me a story recently. I think it was basically there was a parent. They said it might be a true story or whatever. It's an adage. There was a parent that every time they used to make fish, they put the fish they would cut the head off of the fish, they would cut the tail off of the fish, and they would only put the middle part of the fish inside the pan. And this continued. The mom was cooking this fish. The next generation, the daughter was cooking this fish. The third generation, the daughter was cooking the fish and they had a really big pan. And so people asked, they said, hey, why are you cooking, why are you cutting off the front part of the fish, the back part of the fish? There's so much good meat there. That meat is being wasted. What's going on? And so the lady responded, said, well, this is how my mom did it. And this is how my grandma did it. My mom said my grandma did it this way. My mom did it this way. I'm going to do the exact same way. And then finally they found some notes from the grandma. They realized, why was she cutting off the front and the back? Because her pan couldn't fit the fish. And so that's why there was a reason why she was doing it. And the tradition just continued, but the person has a bigger pan. But they don't understand why. They said, I'm just going to blindly follow everything that my parents were doing, and their parents blindly followed what their parents were doing, and we don't even know the reason behind it anymore. And that's what happens with a lot of things. It happens with even many Muslims. I saw my parents praying, so we're just going to do the same thing. Or I saw my parents on Eid al-Adha, they go and they like sacrifice an animal. I guess we're supposed to do something like that. I don't really know. So when you don't know why you're doing what you're doing, and the parents don't teach their children what's the reason behind what we did, then what's going to end up happening? You're going to have a similar situation. And this is exactly how idol worship most probably began. It began with pictures, it began with statues, and originally, these were good people. These were really righteous, pious people. But people just copied, they didn't learn why, and eventually, over time, they're like, well, we're just going to keep on doing the same rituals of what our parents and our grandparents did, and idol worship began that way. So this became a really big problem. This is pretty much how people started worshiping idols, and then they loved it. And so every single time somebody was righteous and they would die, they would make a statue, or they'd make a picture, and people would start venerating the statue and the picture. And over time, maybe a generation or two later, they started venerating the object itself rather than the person that the object represented in the first place. So now, there is a town of people that Allah mentions in the Quran. And they were in the region of ancient Mesopotamia, which is in modern day, which country? Does anybody know where Mesopotamia was? Iraq, yeah. Iraq, Iraq, right? So, And so these people lived there, and they had five main idols. And Allah mentions the names of these idols: Wad, Suwa', Yaghuth, Ya'uq, and Nasr. And these were all the names of five very righteous, pious people that were good people, but eventually they turned into idols and people were praying to them. So the people were praying to these five idols in this region. And so Allah decided it's time to send them another prophet. Maybe there were more prophets in between Adam and Nuh and Idris or whoever it may be. We don't know. What is the timeline between Adam and Nuh? We don't know. But what we know is one of the earliest one of the earliest prophets that's mentioned in the Quran after Adam is Prophet Nuh, one of the oldest prophets that's mentioned. He's before Prophet Ibrahim and he's before Prophet Musa and before most of the other prophets. So Allah decides, I'm going to send this group of people another messenger to warn them to stop doing this. And so how does he do it? How is Allah going to send these people a message to stop? He's going to send a messenger. Why does he send a messenger? Someone could have said, well, why not just communicate directly to me? Why doesn't Allah just inspire every single person in this region that they need to stop doing this? Well, there'd be no test then. If Allah's going to communicate directly with everyone, then, it's like there's no purpose behind choosing between right and wrong when you're kind of given something guaranteed. So Allah doesn't speak to people individually. He spoke to Prophet Adam. He didn't speak directly to his wife. He didn't speak directly to his children. So Adam was the prophet for his own family. And now Allah is sending another prophet, and that is Prophet Nuh. So Allah is going to decide now, which person should I choose from these people? Now, how does Allah make a decision on who to choose? Is he going to choose the richest person? Is he going to choose the most handsome person? The strongest person? No, Allah doesn't care about those things. So there's a lot of people who were smart. They knew how to build nice homes. They were good at hunting. They were good at business. They were good at farming. Allah doesn't care about those people. He's not going to choose those people because of their skills. He chose Nuh. And why did he choose Nuh? Because Nuh was one of the best people among them. He was one of the people who never worshipped any of the idols. He was one of the people, he was very good to everyone. He was wise. He had emotional control. He was a good person. So Allah chose him. And he revealed to him, he said, Nuh, I am Allah. And I've chosen you to be a messenger. Your job is to go and tell the people to stop worshipping these idols and that they should only pray to me and they should not pray to anybody else. So now Nuh becomes a messenger of Allah and he's got a mission. His job is to go to his own people and tell them and get them to stop worshipping idols. So now what happens is there's a response. And the story of Prophet Nuh, it seems very small in the Quran. Once we're at the end of the story, say, how much do you remember? You're going to be like, oh, his story is super short. Really not much happens at all. But the number of verses that are dedicated to the story of Prophet Nuh is a lot. And the reason why it's a lot is because there's a lot of back and forth argumentation, discussion, debate between Nuh and his people. And so I'm going to super summarize this because it is very long. You could spend like 2-3 hours on it. But just to summarize it, people started immediately when Nuh went to them and said, listen guys, Allah has revealed to me a message. He's our creator. We should only pray to him. We should stop praying to these idols. Some people started making fun of him. They said, man, this guy, yesterday he was just a normal guy like us. And now he's going to tell us that he's a messenger of Allah, that he's communicating, that the creator is communicating with him directly. How did this guy change so quickly? How did it just happen yesterday he was like this and now he's all of a sudden like this? So they started making fun of him. They said we're not willing to accept that the creator has chosen one person to directly communicate with. So that's the first response, first argument. Then the people who are wealthy, again, there's always going to be some people who are more well off for whatever reasons than others. So the wealthy people in the town, they started making a joke. They're like, oh, Allah chose this guy? Couldn't Allah pick somebody who actually had more money than this guy? This guy's not very wealthy. Look how much money we have. He could have picked one of us And we're supposed to believe that he picked a poor person. So that for them, they were arrogant. They thought that they're better than everybody else because they have a lot of wealth. So for them, they just said, you know what? If Allah was going to choose someone, if our Creator was going to choose someone, he should have chosen somebody who's wealthy like us. It doesn't make sense he's going to choose someone poor. So he must be lying because it had to have been a wealthy person. Then the people who had a lot of power. Sometimes people who have power, they're not the wealthiest. Sometimes the people wealthiest don't have the most power, right? So there were other people who were in charge of the city, very good social standing, very popular. People respect them. People like them. They were concerned about their own position. So their response to Nuh was, man, this guy, he just wants power. He just wants respect. He just wants to become popular like us. So we're not going to believe in this guy because he wants to be in our position. He couldn't do it the same way that we acquired it. We acquired it by making friends and greeting people and giving gifts and maybe bribing people or whatever it is with our personality and our charisma and our charm. And he wants to get a shortcut by saying that he has a direct communication with the creator of the world. We're not going to believe in this guy. So then you got three responses so far. Then you got a fourth response. Other people said, you know what? This guy's just a human being. He's just a normal man. If Allah, the Creator, was going to send down a message with someone, He would have sent an angel. So they had a concept of like spiritual beings. Allah would not have sent a human being. He would have sent an angel. But actually, they're wrong. And Allah responds to them, explaining why they're wrong. Why would Allah send a human rather than sending an angel? Well, first of all, the first response is Allah can send whoever He wants. You don't question the Creator and say, well, you should have sent a talking cow, or you should have sent a flying creature. Allah can send whoever He wants. It's not your decision to decide what Allah can choose or not choose. That's the first answer. The second answer is, well, why did Allah choose a human? Why did Allah choose a man? Well, it makes a lot of sense because the man's responsibility is to teach people that they should not worship idols, but to also be a role model for everybody else in his own personal life. And so, if Allah sent an angel, people are going to go and make an excuse, and they're going to say, you know what, man, this angel is our role model. This angel's perfect. It's like a spiritual being, doesn't get hungry, doesn't get thirsty, doesn't go to the bathroom, doesn't get married, doesn't have children. How are we supposed to somehow relate to this role model of ours that we're supposed to be following? We can't relate. And it's so by sending a human, people cannot make that excuse and say, you know what, oh, it's not fair, you sent somebody that we can never emulate. And the strange thing is that even though Allah sent humans as prophets, people still make this excuse. Some of you may have heard this excuse before. If you say, hey, you should be like Prophet Musa, he was very patient and he was very brave and he stood in front of Fir'aun. Man, that's a prophet. Can't be like a prophet. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he was very wise and he decided on the Treaty of Hudaybiyah and we should try to follow it and emulate his way. That's a prophet. We can never be like him. People will make these excuses. And then if you take them down one notch and they say, the Sahaba, the companions, they're also our role models too. We should try to be like Abu Bakr, we should be like Umar. People make an excuse to say, Abu Bakr, Umar, these were the Sahaba. We can never become like them. What are you talking about? Like, I can never be, even try to copy them in anything that they're doing. People love to make excuses. That's just what the way it is. And so what's happening is that Allah didn't want people to make these excuses and say, oh, you didn't send someone from our own species. We can't use that. We can't have that person as a role model. It's never going to work. It doesn't make any sense. So Allah sent a human instead of sending an angel. And he went, and Nuh continued trying to respond to all of these arguments that people were bringing forward. And their responses were extremely weak. They didn't have much. So in the end, their number one argument after all of this, well, you're not rich and you just want to gain popularity and you're a human, you're not an angel, and you were just a man and now all of a sudden you're making a different claim. All of these things, Prophet Noah is responding back and forth with them. And at the end of the day, they say, you know what? At the end of the day, we're going to follow exactly what our ancestors followed. Our ancestors used to worship these idols. We're going to worship the idols too. And that was their strongest argument. Their strongest argument was simply, if it was good enough for our parents and our grandparents, it's good enough for us. There is no further discussion. There's nothing to talk about. We believe that our parents were wise people, their parents were wise people. How dare you come and try to tell us to do something different than what everyone has been doing for 100 years or 200 years? Now, there's a problem with that argument. That's their strongest argument, and many people still make this argument today. Say, what are you talking about? It's always been done this way, right? This people have been doing this for hundreds of years. That's not an argument. That doesn't make it right just because people have been doing it this way for a long time. And so, if you go back and you look at Prophet Adam, he's the original ancestor of all of these people. So if you go far back enough, you'll find that the great 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 grandparents, they were not doing this. They weren't worshiping these idols, right? And just the argument itself, if your parents are lying and they're stealing and they're cheating, should you follow them too and say, well, they were doing it and my grandparents were doing it, so I'm just going to keep on doing it too? And if you look at it from the perspective of the children of Habil or Qabil, right? The Qabil's children, Habil died, right? Maybe, we don't know if he had children before that or not. But Qabil, the son of Nuh, who murdered his brother, who should his children follow? We're talking about Adam, the son who was a murderer, Qabil, and then he has children. His children, if they use the same argument, they say, well, I follow what my father did. Should he follow his father and be a murderer? Or should he follow his grandfather and be someone who doesn't do any of these bad things? So this argument of we follow culture, I follow things because this is the way my parents and my grandparents did it, it's not an argument. And Prophet Nuh tries to respond to them, but the strongest and most common argument that you will always find people making against Islam and against the prophets is, we're going to stick to the ways of our ancestors. And Islam, in a sense, is a rebellion against that. There's a sense of you respect your parents and respect your grandparents in some of the things that they do in general. But there's also an aspect of when someone's doing something wrong, you don't just continue and say, well, I'm just going to blindly follow. Islam is not about that. And that we find that in the story of Prophet Nuh being firmly rooted in that concept. So, how many people believed in Prophet Nuh? There were just a few people. Most of the people who believed in him, they were not very wealthy. They were not very powerful. They were poor, mostly. They wore very simple clothing. These are the type of people who were working hard. They were working in the fields. They were shepherds. They did manual labor. All those people who were wealthy, they didn't have to work so much. They own businesses. They don't have to put in a lot of effort because they have a lot of connections. They're well established. They would wear fancy clothes. They would have much larger homes. These were the upper class, wealthy people of that community. And one of the reasons why the people who were poor were more willing to believe in Prophet Nuh than the people who were wealthy is because it's very easy for people who have a lot of wealth or a lot of power to think that they're better than everyone else. And so they think that they earned that wealth or they earned that power. But actually, it's not like they just did it on their own. Allah is the one who gave them that but they don't realize that Allah helped them to have that. And so that's why they had a problem. They thought, hey, we're the best, we're the smartest. We are better than all these other people. So then they complained to Nuh. And they said, Nuh, how can we believe in you when we look at your followers? Your followers are all the poor people. Something just doesn't seem right. Because if this was true, don't you think the smartest people would follow it? Wouldn't the wealthiest and the most popular people in this town, we would be the ones following it? But look who follows it. It's the poorest laborers who are not considered to be intelligent or not considered to be successful by the society around them. And so they said, you know what? We'll make you a deal. You get rid of all these poor followers, and then we're going to consider believing in you. So because for them, they said, you know what? It's going to make us look bad if we want to believe in you, and then we see, look at the type of people who are Muslims who are following you. It's not a good look for us. So this is the deal that we're willing to make with you. Now, just think about this for a moment. This is a common problem that many humans do, many people do, is that they judge a religion, the truth of a religion, based on its followers. And that's not supposed to be the case. You're not supposed to judge the truth based upon the type of people that you see, whether it's their clothing, whether it's their ethnicity, whether it's maybe some of their mannerisms or whatever. It may be natural. If you see some people and you say, oh, these people are a little bit strange, or these people are a little bit whatever it may be, you may naturally incline toward, well, those type of people follow this type of religion, something's wrong with the religion. But if you stop for a moment, you think about it, you say, this is not the case. And that's why we got to be very careful, because the same argument that these people were making applies to today. There are many people today, they say, you know what, well, when we go to university, let's say you go to the top universities in the world, and you look at the top, supposedly the most intelligent, brilliant minds intellectually, you know, physicists and philosophers and mathematicians, and this supposedly they're the smarter ones for whatever reason, because they can solve calculations or something like that. And you say, Stephen Hawking and Albert Einstein and Isaac Newton and all of these different scientists or these intelligent people. If you look at the modern ones, forget Isaac Newton. You look at the modern ones and you say, well, what religion do they follow? Do they even believe in God? Do they believe in a creator? And interestingly, many of them do, but many of them don't. And the ones that don't, they say, well, they're making the exact same argument that Prophet Nuh's people were making against him. They're saying, look, if the most intelligent people, when it comes to solving equations, their understanding of intelligence, if these people are not believing in this message, then, and the people who don't have that equation solving ability or that whatever abstracting ability, they're not following it, then what, how could this be true? It shouldn't be true. It can't be true. And that's why it's very important not to fall into this trap, because this is exactly what the people of Nuh did, that they judged the truth of the religion based upon the intellect or the success level of the followers. And that's a mistake. And the reason why it's a mistake is because believing in Allah and believing in the truth is not just an intellectual exercise. It's not solving an equation. It's a spiritual and a moral intellect that's required for you to be able to realize the truth. Because people who are very intelligent have the same problem with people who are very wealthy. They have that arrogance. And that arrogance blinds you to being able to see the truth. So they may be really great, amazing in the solving mathematical equations, and then they go home and they're the most foolish people when it comes to dealing with their own family. Maybe they're investing in the stock market, they're the most foolish people when it comes to dealing with their money. So some people may be very intelligent and very successful in one aspect of their life, one field of their life, but they're completely stupid in other aspects of their life. And the more successful they are in one aspect of their life, the more susceptible they are to that arrogance, which is going to blind them from the other aspects of their life. And that's why it's very important not to fall into this trap that the people of Nuh fell into. So they told Nuh, they said, get rid of these poor people, get rid of these weak people, these non-successful people in society, and then we'll consider believing in your message. So they thought, you know what, we should be the ones who are exclusive to this message, not these type of people. So what did Nuh say? Nuh responded, he said, I cannot get rid of true believers. These are people who are believing in my message. They're believing in the message that Allah is sending. I'm just a prophet. My job is to warn people. I can't reject people and say you're not allowed to be a Muslim because you're poor. It doesn't work that way, right? Because Allah knows what's in everyone's heart. So Nuh cannot abandon the true believers. Allah would hold him accountable. So he said, I can't do that. If I were to get rid of these believers, who would save me from Allah? Allah is going to punish me for that. So there's no excommunication in Islam. You can't do that. In some religions, there is. In the Catholic Church, you can be excommunicated. In the Mormon Church, Latter-day Saints Church, you can be excommunicated if you don't attend your halaqah on a regular basis, which I kind of wish we could do, but at the same time, it's not good, right? So you can literally lose your card-carrying membership as a Mormon of the LDS Church if you're not regularly attending events, or if you do something wrong, if you make a mistake. Um, there was a basketball player at Brigham Young University, which is a LDS Mormon like university, and they're very strict. Mormons are very strict, so they're not allowed to drink alcohol. They're not allowed to drink caffeinated beverages either. They're very strict in certain things, and they're not allowed to have illicit relationships. So this basketball player goes to another state, engages in, has a game over there, and then has an illicit relationship. And then they were debating whether they're gonna expel him from the school, and potentially, I think there was some discussion of whether they're gonna excommunicate him from the religion because he's committing a sin. You can't do that. First of all, these people did nothing. Right? Prophet Nuh, they just believed in Nuh. They're not the wealthiest people. It doesn't mean that they're bad. There's nothing wrong with them. And so they're going and saying to Prophet Nuh, get rid of these people and then we'll consider believing in you. Nuh's response is, there's nothing wrong with these people, and I cannot remove people from this religion because I'm going to be held accountable. That's not the way it works. You don't get to select who you want to be a believer and not be a believer. Which is very interesting because on the one hand, when people talk about organized religion, on the one hand, Islam is an organized religion. There's a set of beliefs and there's a book and there's everything else. But in the other sense, it's not an organized religion in the sense that anyone who's going to follow these principles is considered to be a Muslim in the sight of Allah. There is no centralized authority that's going to say, yes, you are Muslim and you are not Muslim in the akhirah. In the dunya, it's something different, but in the akhirah, you can't do that. So this is what happened with Prophet Nuh. So then Allah is very upset with these people. These people are making excuses. They're arguing with Nuh. They're saying that they're better than him. They're making up all of these things. And so Allah created the world. Allah gave them the opportunity to live in this world comfortably on earth. And what did they do instead? They're praying to idols. They're thanking the idols. Anytime they need something, they say, we're going to go to these statues. And these were just people who had passed away. So Allah gave them so many chances. Nuh kept on trying to convince them, arguing with them, and they kept on refusing. Eventually, after a long time, the Quran mentions that Prophet Nuh stayed with his people and invited them for 950 years. Right? So we're talking about a very long lifespan. Some people interpret this into a different time span, but it says 950 years. So he's been trying to convince them. Very few people believe in him. How long is he going to keep doing this? How long is he going to wait? How many chances are they going to get? So Nuh finally just tired of it. So Allah revealed to him after all this time, he said, Nuh, I'm going to tell you something. Starting from now, no one among your people is going to believe anymore except the people who are already believers. Basically, I'm letting you know something about the future. Everyone who is going to believe in your city has already accepted Islam and believes in you. Everyone else, no one else is going to believe no matter how much effort you put in there. So Nuh is like, then forget this. My mission is done. I'm done with these people. So Nuh says, okay, you know what? If that's the case, because his people used to come and they didn't just argue with him, they would mock him. They would make fun of him. And they used to say, show us the punishment of Allah. If you're telling the truth, ask Allah to bring the punishment. Come on, we want to see. Allah's all-powerful and you're the real prophet, tell him to come and destroy us. That's what they used to say. So Nuh is like, this is what they used to say? Okay, you know what? Allah give them what they used to ask for. They used to come and ask for punishment. They said, come and destroy our village, show us. So Nuh made dua to Allah and he said, oh Allah, this is what they asked for? Give it to them. Don't leave a single one of these unbelievers in the land. Just destroy all of them. Every single one of them. So he made this dua, and so Allah accepted his request. And he said, okay, I'm going to do that. But how? Nuh doesn't know exactly. So Allah decided that he's going to drown all of these people in a flood. But he wanted to save the believers. So how is he going to do that? So Allah told Nuh, said, I want you to start building a ship. And so he complied. He got the materials, he got some of the Muslims together, and they started working in building the ship. When the people walked by and they saw Nuh building a ship, they started making fun of him. They're like, Nuh, what are you doing, man? You gone crazy? You all of a sudden, okay, first you were a normal guy, now you're saying you're a prophet, now you're a shipbuilder. And you're building a ship in the middle of the land. Nobody builds a ship in the middle of the land. Once you build it, who's going to drag it all the way to the water? You're supposed to build a ship next to water. We're not a seaside town. So he says, this guy's gone crazy. So they would make fun of him. And they say, man, you have gone crazy. Something is wrong with you. Nuh, he had to be patient. He had to deal with all of the garbage that his people would be throwing at him. Meaning verbal garbage that they would throw at him. Which is a very important lesson. When we find that some politicians and these Islam-hating people, they say stuff, this is not new. Making fun of Islam and making fun of the Muslims is not new. This is as old as human history. So Prophet Nuh, they would make fun of him. And usually he would just be patient. He wouldn't respond and he wouldn't lose his temper. But sometimes he would respond. And what he used to say is he would say, you know what, you're making fun of us now, because the Muslims are with him. You're making fun of us now, but soon we're going to be making fun of you. Just you watch. And so why did he respond like that? He responded like that because as a Muslim, you're not only supposed to sit there, and being patient doesn't mean you sit there and you just keep getting attacked and attacked and you say, I'm a Muslim, I'm just going to be patient, I'm going to let people attack me and I'm supposed to be the better person. Not always the case. What you don't do is you don't go and attack them. You're like, how dare you? You beat them up. You're not allowed to do that either. But you can respond. Just like Prophet Nuh responded. So sometimes he would respond and say, oh yeah, you're making fun of us now. Just watch. When this flood comes, we're going to be making fun of you because you're the only one who doesn't have a boat. And we do. And so that is a way to preserve your dignity. And so it's important for Muslims not to think that when we get attacked, we have to simply be quiet. And we are not allowed to respond to preserve our dignity. There's a response to attacking and harming the other person, and then there's a response of protecting and preserving your own dignity. It's like a quick comeback, and just throw something out there, but it doesn't cross a line where you're harming the other person. You don't stoop to their level, but you do something that at least you can walk away with a better sense of honor. This is exactly what Prophet Nuh did. So we need to come up with that. I mean, Muslims, we should learn how to do that. Some people are better at it than others. So when somebody's attacking Islam or something like that, or making fun of Muslims or whatever, you're allowed to have a comeback. You just don't go back and insult the other person and step over the boundaries. So Prophet Nuh did that, and then the flood began. It started raining, and it did not stop. And water started coming out from both directions. Rain is coming, and water also comes out from the ground. So the water is coming out from the ground, there's naturally water comes from the ground, wells and geysers and other things. So water starts coming out from the ground, water starts coming from the top from rain, and the water level just starts getting higher and higher. So Allah told Nuh, He said, now it's begun. You're going to take your family, and you're going to take your believers, and you're going to go into the ship. And Allah also told him, you're going to take a pair of as many land animals as you can, one male and one female, onto the ship with you. Now, so they lived in a valley. And the valley is like two hills on the sides. And in the middle, it's like low land. So once it rains there, it starts to fill up very fast. If you've ever been in a valley, if you've ever been in a flood in a valley, hopefully you haven't. I have, when I went for Hajj, stuck in a valley and there was a flood and the water level starts to rise really fast. So that's exactly what happened. The water level starts to rise. It starts to cover the entire area. Even the houses start flooding. And the people of Nuh, they start climbing up hills. They're trying to save themselves, jumping on top of their homes. But these waves, and there was waves because the water was moving, there was some wind, they were drowning. And they were dying. And so one of the people we encounter during the flood is the son of Prophet Nuh. So Prophet Nuh's son, we don't know how many he had, but at least one of them, he was not a believer. he did not believe in his own father. And the wife of Prophet Nuh did not believe in her own husband. And so Prophet Nuh is on the boat with the believers, and he saw his son. While the boat was moving along, he saw his son in the distance, and he somehow managed to get close enough to yell out to him. And he yelled out and he said, "My son, come join us in the ship." Like he had an opportunity. He's like, "There's a ship right here." And he sees the water level rising. He goes, "Come and join us. Don't stay with these disbelieving people. You have a chance." And so the son responds. He goes, "Don't worry, Dad. I'm going to climb the highest mountain that we have over here. The water level is never going to make it up there. It's never going to reach me. I'll be safe. Water can rise a little bit, but it's never going to get that high." So Nuh, he had the son of Nuh, he had this mentality of, look, cause and effect, science. Something like this never happened. We've seen maybe water level rise. It's never going to rise up there because we don't know of anything like this happening. And therefore, I'm going to be perfectly fine as long as I'm high enough. So Nuh responded to his son and he said, "My son, nothing can protect you from Allah's punishment today. Just, you need to get on board. This is serious." Son said, "Nope, not going to listen to you, Dad." He goes, "Even though he's a messenger of Allah, I'm not going to listen to you." So after a little while, he refused to get on the boat. The water level was rising. A wave came, overtook the son, basically washed him away, and he drowned. His own mother drowned. So now Nuh just lost his wife. Nuh just lost his son. And now he's very sad, naturally. Why is he sad? Not only is his son going to die, and his wife too, but his son is going to die, but what's worse than him dying is that he's going to die as a disbeliever. And so now he's going to be punished in the fire of hell, which is worse than being punished in the water of this world. Because if you die, you die, but at least you can get to Jannah. If you die and you're going to go to Jahannam, this is worse. So Nuh now is very sad. So Nuh, even though he's a prophet, he prayed to Allah out of sadness. And he said, "Oh Allah, you promised me that you're going to protect me and you're going to protect my family." He said, "My son is a part of my family. And I know that your promise is true. I know that whatever you say is correct." And so Allah responded to Nuh. And he said, "Nuh, he is not part of your family. Your son and your wife, by extension, is not part of your family." Talking about the son. He has done so many bad things. And Allah says, "Do not ask me to do something that is incorrect, because he deserves to be punished." So basically, Nuh realized his mistake. Because Allah is telling him that just because you're his father, he does not get a get out of Jahannam free card because you prayed for him. If he has made a mistake, a very serious mistake, and he does not want to give up idol worship, doesn't want to believe in the truth, your dua cannot automatically save him, because that would be unjust. Because the other parents don't get to do the same thing. Even though Nuh is a prophet, you don't get that. So Nuh realized his mistake, and he felt very sorry that he had made a disrespectful dua, a disrespectful prayer. And so he asked Allah for forgiveness. He said, "Oh Allah, forgive me and have mercy on me for asking that question. You're right, I should not have even asked that question." He realized that, number one, it's wrong to ask Allah to make an exception for somebody who has done something wrong. You don't get to make exceptions like that. And number two, Allah taught him that your true family are the believers. Even though you're supposed to be good to your family members in terms of your blood family, Allah has redefined what family is. When He said to Nuh that he is not actually part of your family, even though he's his bloodline. This is his biological son. But He's saying, no, he's not really part of your family. Because what Islam does, it redefines what real family is. And real family entails having the core truths of life solid, meaning believing in the truth of Islam. So, and there may be a connection, by the way, between Nuh, the son of Nuh, and the wife of Nuh. Because sometimes people, they wonder, they ask, they say, you know what? They look at somebody, let's say a righteous person in the Muslim community. Hey man, that person is so good, and they go to the masjid and they pray and everything looks good. But man, his kids or her kids, they're so jacked up and they're doing horrible things and they're committing zina, and one of them is a drug dealer, and it's, man, what were the parents doing? What horrible parents. There's something going on. Probably the father, people have all sorts of weird theories. The father spends too much time in the masjid, attends too many classes, and that's why the kids are messed up. Are we going to say that about Prophet Nuh? Are we going to say that the person that Allah chose to be a messenger of Allah, that he was doing something wrong, that's why his son got messed up? His wife who didn't believe in him, is it his fault? He was a bad husband and that's why she got messed up and she didn't want to accept the truth of Islam? It's very important that we don't make these kind of judgments because they're too common. And people have this assumption that if there's one righteous person in a family, they're supposed to somehow automatically make everyone else in that family perfect. So if there's one righteous man, his wife needs to be an amazing Muslim and all of their children. The one amazing woman, then her husband needs to be an amazing righteous person and all of her children and her parents somehow. But that's not the way Islam views it. Islam views people as individuals. If that was the case, we'd be like, man, Prophet Nuh, his family's messed up. You want to talk about messed up families? This is a messed up family. His wife is a disbeliever and he's a prophet. His son is a disbeliever and he's a prophet. And he's literally seeing the boat in front of him and saying, you got one chance to get on the boat. And he goes, Dad, forget you, Dad, I'm fine. Rebellious, whatever, teenager, he's in his 20s, in his 30s, we don't know what his age is. So it's very important that we don't hastily make judgment. Our responsibility is to be good, the best role models to our spouse, to our children, to our parents. But that's not a guarantee that they're going to be guided in the right way. And vice versa. If you see someone is going off on the wrong path, it doesn't mean that the righteous person next to them is causing the problem. Otherwise, we'd be judging prophets like Nuh, and we should not be doing that. And so, this flood began, and it ended, and the disbelievers were wiped out, and they were all gone. The rain finally stopped. The water sunk back into the ground. And the ship of Nuh, it landed on this mountaintop called Judi, Mount Judi. And some of you may have seen, this picture of what Mount Judi is or something like that. I think it's a fake picture. Anyways, before AI. And so Allah told Nuh, now He says, you can now get off the ship safely. And the believers, they started a brand new community. They had one of each animal. Why? Because now these animals can procreate, generate more animals, because the land animals must have been extinct or like wiped out in that region. The birds obviously can fly, so they're fine. The sea creatures obviously are fine, because what you find is, I've seen this in Barnes and Noble. You go to like the kids section and you find like Noah's Ark, the biblical version, like the Christian version. And you see like an ark, it's like really cool, it's like a little boat. And then you see like a bunch of animals on the boat. And I saw like one time, I think I saw like a dolphin, it's like waving. There's like a whale, there's like a shark. Why would He bring all these animals on the boat? He doesn't need to bring these animals. He only brought the animals that you would need to restart a society, which is the land animals, in order for them to procreate and start a new community. So the believers started a new community in that region, and these people only prayed to Allah, and this ends the story of Prophet Nuh. Alright, so we'll leave it at that, and I'll open it up to questions, inshallah. Our slide of questions.
So if you guys want to scan it and type out your questions, Jazakumullah khair. While we wait, if anyone has a question they want to ask related to the topic, Jazakumullah khair.
Assalamu alaikum. You mentioned a few times that Allah spoke to Prophet Nuh. Do we know what language he spoke in?
No, we don't know what language.
I got a question. What is the biggest takeaway story, do you think, for our generation right now when we reflect on Nabi Noor?
There's many, that we covered in there. Okay, looking at the questions. The biggest takeaway would be patience and persistence in conveying the message, even though people are rejecting, and the wisdom of how to respond to their arguments.
Jazakallah khair. So you can start picking and choosing from
Nuh collect all the insects of the world. Just curious because that's crazy. All right, so the first question is it's really concerning whether the flood is universal or local. And this is a really important point because conservative Christians, fundamentalist Christians, they all state that the flood is universal, meaning the entire human race was wiped out, every single person on earth, and then it began again. And if we take that narrative, then that means that Nuh had to have all of the creatures in the world on his boat, including all the insects and everything, because they have to restart. Allah's not going to recreate these animals again. And so that's kind of the problem, the scientific problem with the idea that the flood was universal. What does Islam say? Well, in the Quran, Allah says that He caused a flood to occur in the ard, fil ard, in the land. So the word ard could mean the earth. The word ard also means land. You sit on, it also means the ground, right? You sit on the ard, you sit on the ground. You don't sit on planet Earth, right? So the word ard has a lot of meanings. And so nowhere in the Quran or in any authentic hadith does it say that every single person on earth was wiped out. This is a literal reading of the book of Genesis, of the Bible, that people say, well, this is the way we accept it. So Muslim scholars have differed in terms of, was this universal or was this local only to one region where Prophet Nuh was? And without going into too much detail, I slightly lean towards the view that it was local because it just seems to make more sense, and there's no clear evidence that it was universal. And that resolves a lot of the issues of trying to answer, all of the scientific explanations of how could this have happened. Why isn't there evidence for a globalized flood, but there's a lot of evidence for a localized flood in that region, and so many other things. So that's my view, and that's the status of the flood being local or global. With the dinosaur, it's the same thing. So again, we don't know if he took a dinosaur with him. We don't know what year he lived in. So the dinosaurs were probably extinct prior to that or something. So Nuh chose to be a messenger. Do they have the option? No, what I meant was Nuh was chosen to be a messenger. So if I misspoke, I meant that Nuh was chosen to be a messenger. 5 righteous people pre-idols. Do we know anything else about how they're righteous? No, we don't know anything else about these people. Was the repopulation the reason why Nuh lived for so long, or was the reason or purpose for him? What was the reason a person was living that long? It's just a lesson in patience to show that Nuh had to deal and endure for such a long time. When we endure difficult tests, we're fed up after 1 year, or after like 1 month. So Nuh had to go for a long time. So he's a role model for us in the sense that he endured for a very, very long time and he kept going. Do Nuh have miracles for the people similar to other prophets? Well, technically his miracle was the flood, but of course, miracles are not directly from prophets, they're from Allah. But the miracle of Nuh, which was not to convince people to believe, miracles are usually to convince people to believe. So technically, no, he didn't have a miracle. but it was miraculous that he knew exactly to build a boat right before a flood came. So that is a miracle, but not a miracle in the sense that it's convincing other people to believe. I feel like it was in that, if I was in that community, I would doubt Nuh as well. How do you open yourself up to the truth versus fighting family traditions? So there's the one aspect of, well, it's really hard to say what you would do if you were in that community. So if the challenge is fighting family traditions, um, how do you open yourself up to the truth? Well, the thing is, everyone has fitrah in them. Everyone has a natural disposition to believe in the base truth within them. And what you should do is you should become the type of person who doesn't blindly follow family traditions. When there's something that's not that significant, oh, this is how we cook this food and we eat this and we wear this clothing, you don't need to fight against that because it doesn't have a massive impact. But if the family tradition is to, like, bully some people or assassinate, I mean, something extreme, like something that's really bad, you're like part of the mafia or something like that, and you're like, okay, we shouldn't be doing something like this. There's a lot of weird traditions. I mean, there's Hindus have this tradition called sati, where basically when a husband dies, the woman voluntarily goes and burns herself to death along with him. So that's a family tradition. That's a cultural, religious tradition. So I mean, something like that, you should fight against that. So something that's pretty significant, you should fight against that. So how do you open yourself up? That's a struggle that requires some personal introspection, maybe some personal mentorship on how to do that. So I can't really answer it in detail, but it's important to fight family traditions that are very harmful or they're completely just wrong. So we just need to do that. Archaeologists think they possibly found the Ark Lodge in the mountain in Turkey based on scans of the area. Have you seen that? Yeah, I looked into it, and I didn't look too much into detail, but it didn't seem that convincing. But it does seem that it's possible around the region of Turkey, Iraq is kind of where they might have ended up. So there's a possibility, but I have not looked into detail on it. I'm a little skeptical when I see like not very well peer-reviewed archaeological research, so we should be cautious. What region did this occur in? So they were in ancient Mesopotamia. That's what we have from historians. Again, historians are not 100% sure, but this is their best guess. Did the pagans of Mecca get the same idols of peoples of Nuh? Yeah, so there's something about how they had come up with similar idols that originally were from the people of Nuh. So there is a connection between the names that they had adopted as their idols, but they had a ton of answers. They had a ton of different. Like there was 300 idols in and around the Kaaba, as we mentioned in the Sierra class. So yes, they adopted some of the same names as the people of the past. How do we deal with being skeptics? Is this from modernity? I mean, modernity, people tend to be a little bit more skeptical, but skepticism is not something that's exclusive to the past. There were atheists in the past, there were skeptics in the past, there were nihilists in the past. So maybe it's more common nowadays, but humanity has had all types of people throughout history. You've had your crooks, you've had your mafia people, you've had your charlatans, you've had everything that you see today. You've had those type of characters and personalities and people somewhere in the past as well. And that's why we can learn a lot from the past. But I don't think we should think that it's just a modern issue. How do we deal with being skeptics? Being extremely skeptical, not accepting anything that is outside of the physical world. That requires a little bit of thought, introspection, and proper reading. A good book I recommend is God, Islam, and the Skeptic Mind, second edition. It's a really good book that helps with this. How do you encourage Muslims to involve themselves with poor people? They're usually avoided or ignored, like beggars outside the masjid. Okay, well, um, involving yourself with poor people I'm assuming maybe it could potentially mean helping people who are poor, involving yourselves with poor people, meaning like hanging out with them and socializing with them or something like that. That could potentially be the case as well. The thing is, it depends where you are. I mean, it's hard to know who's who. You know, we're in Irvine. Irvine's supposed to be a very affluent community, but then there are many people who are struggling financially, even in the Irvine Masjid. So you can socialize with everybody, and eventually we will be socializing with some of the people who are poor. If you want to focus specifically on that community for whatever spiritual tarbiyah reason, go to a masjid where there's a lot more concentration of poor people. Like for example, you go to Islah LA. It's underserved community, very nice, beautiful community, like some of the best khutbas I've attended are there. I really recommend you check it out. It's like a different world. You're like in a different world when you go 1 hour attend Islah LA, or you go to like some of these other masjids, or you go to like Rosarito or Tijuana Masjid. Right? It's a different world, very very different world. So I recommend you try doing that. And then this thing about like beggars outside the masjids, I gotta make a comment since this came up. So the thing is, when it comes to beggars outside the masjid, especially when it comes to Orange County, we know that many of those people, they are gypsies, and they are paid mafia who actually who are not even Muslim, and they pretend like they're Muslim, and they're scamming the Muslim community, and they're taking the Muslim community's money. I know because I've done like a whole research project, and we followed them, and they got into their Mercedes afterwards and everything. It's really sad. I think I mentioned this maybe in this class before. But so we have to be careful. We have to be smart. Alhamdulillah, when it comes to our community here in Irvine, we have an amazing program called CAP, Community Assistance Program, where people give their zakat money. Anyone who's genuinely in need, they can always come and apply for money at the CAP program, and the CAP program has too much money, they can't even distribute it. Uplift Charity has too much zakat money, they can't even distribute it. The thing is, the people who show up there, most of these people who are outside, they don't want to come into the office. They don't want to approach the people in CAP because they've already come and they've been kind of called out that after they received the first amount of money, when they investigated, they checked what their finances are and what they're doing, there's something very shady about them. So that's why there's a difference between people who are legitimately struggling financially and people who are necessarily outside the masjid and they're begging. I want you to understand the difference between the two. There are genuine, people who are in poverty, but not everyone who appears to be that and who's begging outside is one of those people. In fact, many of them who are outside, they could easily get help. We have the funds and the access to get them help, but they don't want to because they don't actually wouldn't qualify for it because something else shady is going on. One more question? One more question. Would it be halal to destroy people's idols in today's time? So we'll talk more about that when we cover Ibrahim, Prophet Ibrahim. But the short answer is no. You don't go into somebody else's idol, like temple or house, and you break their idols. This is not the general behavior of a Muslim, and we'll explain why when we cover Ibrahim. Okay, we'll leave it at that. Subhanakallahumma bihamdik. Shadu wa la ilaha illa ant. Astaghfiruka wa atubu ilayk. Assalamu alaikum.